You came back. Good. Pull up a chair and try not to make a sound. This is the last whisper. 16 was the age when every child in Rook Hollow had to make a choice. Keep the voice they were born with or lose it forever. The adults who chose silence claimed it kept them safe. The ones who kept talking called it an old superstition. That argument lasted for years, right up until the summer night when voices started calling from the cornfields after dark. They sounded exactly like mothers, brothers, daughters, and husbands. The oldest woman in town gave one warning and repeated it without fear. No matter who called your name, nobody was allowed to answer. A lot of people laughed at her. By sunrise, the laughter was gone. Rook Hollow sat miles away from the nearest highway, tucked into flat farmland where the wind always had room to run. In daylight, it looked like the kind of town people forgot about on purpose. A church, a grain elevator, a diner, a gas station, and rows of houses that all looked too still after sunset. Nothing about it looked cursed. Nothing about it looked hungry. That was exactly why it survived as long as it did. The town had one custom outsiders hated hearing about. A few weeks before a child turned 16, the family would start having quiet conversations behind closed doors. The question was always the same. Would the child remain among the speaking or join the still? The still went through a simple medical procedure and never used their voices again. No screaming, no whispering, no singing. They signed, wrote notes, tapped messages, and learned how to live inside silence without breaking under it. People from outside town called it barbaric. People inside Rook Hollow called it necessary. Evelyn Hart had always believed she would keep her voice. She loved reading aloud in class. She loved the sound of words landing clean and sharp. She loved hearing herself laugh with her younger brother in the kitchen when their mother pretended to be angry about the noise. Losing all of that felt unthinkable. Her 16th birthday was 10 days away, and for the first time in her life, nobody in the house was treating her like a child anymore. Her father had joined the still at 16. Her mother had not. That difference shaped everything. Her father moved with an eerie calm that made every room feel quieter the moment he entered it. He could say more with one look than most people said all day. Her mother spoke enough for both of them. She filled awkward silence before it had the chance to grow. She sang while making dinner, muttered while folding laundry, and called everyone by pet names that made the house feel warm. Evelyn used to think that meant her mother was stronger. As her birthday got closer, she stopped being so sure. Every child in Rook Hollow grew up hearing about the dream. It always came before 16. No one escaped it. A dead field under an empty sky. No moon, no stars. A line of figures standing shoulder to shoulder in the dirt, all looking upward as though they were waiting for something above them to speak. The older folks said the dream was not a symbol. It was a warning. It was the first knock on the door. Evelyn had not had the dream yet. That made the waiting unbearable. 3 days before the dream finally came, her mother took her to see Miriam Vale, the oldest woman in Rook Hollow, and the one person nobody argued with for long. Miriam had founded the town decades earlier. She lived alone in a narrow, weather-beaten house with a square watchtower rising over the roof like a dark lookout post. From that tower, she could see every road that led in and every field that touched the tree line. People said she could predict droughts before the sky changed, livestock sickness before the first animal dropped, and death before a doctor had even been called. More unsettling than any of that, people also said she had never lied. Not once. Miriam's caretaker led Evelyn up the stairs and left her alone in the tower room. The old woman sat beside the window with a blanket over her knees, thin as bundled branches and twice as hard. The room smelled of lamp oil, dried herbs, old books, and the kind of cold that never really leaves a house no matter how warm the stove burns. Miriam looked at Evelyn for a long time before she signed a single word. Soon. Evelyn tried to smile, but it died halfway. She signed back that she had not had the dream yet. Miriam's hands moved again, slow and precise. It already sees her. That answer hit harder than anything Evelyn expected. She asked the question every teenager eventually asked. Why had Miriam chosen silence in the first place? The old woman turned her face toward the western fields and started signing again. When Miriam was 15, she lived on a farm nowhere near Rook Hollow. She started waking in the middle of the night to hear someone calling her name from outside the house. The voice changed every night. Sometimes it sounded like her mother. Sometimes it sounded like her younger sister. One night it sounded like her own voice, only older, flatter, and wrong in a way she could feel in her teeth. For days she ignored it. On the seventh night she answered through the window. The thing outside answered back. It repeated her words perfectly at first. Then it kept talking after she had gone silent. That was when Miriam understood there was something in the dark that did not need a face. It only needed a voice to borrow. She stopped speaking after sunset. Then she started speaking less during the day. The quieter she became, the clearer the world around her felt. She could sense what was false before it got close enough to touch the walls. She could feel danger in open ground, hear lies in familiar tones, catch a rotten note hidden inside ordinary sound. Silence did not make life holy. Silence made deception easier to detect. Then Miriam gave Evelyn the line that stayed in her mind long after she left the tower. Speech invites it closer. That was the truth beneath the entire tradition. The still were never trying to be pure, they were trying to survive. Miriam signed one more warning before the meeting ended. As children neared 16, the thing in the dark always paid attention to them. Young voices were easier for it to learn, easier for it to mimic, easier for it to use. That night, Evelyn lay awake staring at the ceiling until dawn started bleaching the edges of her curtains. Her father appeared in the doorway without making a sound. He crossed the room, pressed 2 fingers gently against the base of her throat, and signed with one hand in the dark. It does not want blood first. It wants permission. 2 nights later, the dream came. The field in the dream stretched farther than any real field around Rook Hollow. The dirt was black and dry and packed flat like a graveyard with no stones. Men, women, and children stood in rows with their mouths hanging open toward a sky that held no stars at all. They did not look alive. They looked emptied out. At the center of the field stood Evelyn, and from somewhere above the crowd came a voice with no body behind it. Count the mouths. She woke up choking, clawing at her bedsheets, unable to shake the feeling that something had been standing at her bedroom window, listening to her breathe. By breakfast, her answer was final. The procedure happened 4 days before her birthday. The doctor said almost nothing. Her mother cried in the parking lot after it was over. Her father sat beside her bed during recovery and signed stories from memory to keep her calm while the soreness passed. Every instinct in Evelyn's body wanted to test the damage and force one sound out of her throat, just to prove she still could. She refused. Even in pain, she understood something with terrifying clarity. The house felt safer the moment her own voice was gone. A week later, Miriam sent a message to the town meeting. Do not answer any voice calling from the fields after sunset. Do not open a door because someone sounds frightened. Do not follow crying into the dark. Keep light in every window until dawn. Do not sing at night. The mayor laughed when the note was read aloud. A few farmers laughed with him. Somebody in the back muttered that old age had finally rotted Miriam's mind. A waitress from the diner joked that the corn must be haunted now. The room loosened with cheap laughter, but the still did not join in. Not one of them smiled. The first sign appeared the next evening. Dogs started whining at shut doors and backing away from porches. Horses refused to enter their stalls after sundown. One baby cried so hard at twilight that tiny blood vessels burst under the skin around his eyes. By 9 o'clock, people all across town started hearing voices outside their homes. A woman heard her dead husband humming on the back porch. A boy heard his older brother crying in the shed, even though that brother had drowned in the river the previous spring. A man heard his own daughter call from the cornfield while she sat 3 feet away from him at the kitchen table. The thing moved fast, faster than fear ever should. A teenager named Lucas Reed opened his front door when he heard his mother begging for help from the yard. His real mother was asleep upstairs with a fever. Lucas vanished before midnight. At sunrise, his shoes were found standing upright in the dirt beside the mailbox, toes pointed toward the house, as though someone had set them there carefully. Nobody laughed at Miriam's warning after that. The second night was worse. The voices came closer. They did not stay by fences and roads anymore. They moved along walls. They stopped outside bedroom windows. They knew nicknames, old family jokes, and private memories nobody else should have known. One voice outside Evelyn's house sounded like her mother, then her little brother, then a teacher from middle school, then Evelyn herself from before the procedure. Every imitation was perfect for 1 second and rotten the next, like hearing a familiar song played on an instrument made from bone. Her mother shook so badly she had to clamp both hands over her mouth to stop herself from answering by instinct. Her father wrote 4 words on the back of an electric bill and pushed it across the table. "It is testing the locks." By the 3rd day, fear had turned ugly. People who were too proud to admit they had ignored the warning needed someone to blame. They blamed the still. Rumors spread that the silent families had brought the thing into town years ago. Someone painted "Devil's Flock" across the church wall. Someone nailed a dead crow to Miriam's gate. Nobody tried to stop it. At sunset that same day, the power went out. Rook Hollow dropped into a darkness so complete it felt physical. Lamps glowed behind curtains. Candles shook in nervous hands. And then the calling began all at once. Not one voice, not 10, hundreds. Every porch, every alley, every fence line, every side yard. "Open the door! Open the door!" Open the door. Mothers heard children outside in the dark. Children heard fathers from the barn. Old men heard wives who had been buried 20 years asking to be let in because it was cold. Some people held firm. Some started screaming at the darkness to leave them alone. Some opened their doors because love and panic are both stronger than caution when they hit at the same time. That was enough. By midnight, the town no longer sounded human. Glass shattered, shotguns fired. People ran through yards calling names that should never have been answered. Prayers rose from every direction and died under the weight of all that imitation. By morning, the people who had answered the voices were still alive, but something inside them had shifted. Their expressions lagged a second behind their words. Their smiles never reached their eyes. Their voices sounded almost right, but not fully inhabited. One woman kept insisting her missing son had come home, though nobody ever saw him standing beside her. A man on Willow Street called his own wife by the wrong name 3 times in one conversation and did not seem to notice. Then the mob formed. It gathered at noon outside Miriam Vale's house. Some wanted answers, some wanted revenge. Some wanted to force the still to speak, convinced that the silence itself was feeding whatever moved in the dark. Fear had found the shape it always takes when people feel powerless. It became a crowd. Miriam's caretaker got one message to Evelyn's family before the roads filled with shouting men. "Go to the old seed vault beyond Carter's Creek. Use the pine trail. No L. Ites. No voices." Evelyn's mother read the note once and went pale. She was the only adult in the house who still had a voice, which meant she was the only one who could distract the mob, argue with them, mislead them, or buy the rest of her family enough time to run. Nobody said the obvious truth out loud. Nobody needed to. The crowd reached their road at dusk, boots on gravel, metal striking wood, voices piling over one another in the dark. Evelyn's father packed food, matches, batteries, and a hunting knife into a canvas bag. Her little brother was crying. Her older sister moved like she was underwater. At the back door, their mother grabbed Evelyn by both shoulders and looked at her with the kind of love that already knew it was running out of time. Then she turned, stepped around the side of the house, and started shouting toward the road that she knew where the silent families had gone. The family ran. The pine trail cut west behind the last row of houses and vanished into dense trees. Branches slapped at their faces, roots twisted underfoot. Behind them, lantern light moved between trunks like a swarm of fireflies with bad intentions. Once, Evelyn nearly turned around when she heard a woman scream back toward town. The sound stopped too suddenly. That was worse than hearing it continue. Then guidance started touching the edge of her mind. No words, just certainty. Left at the split cedar. Down the bank, across the stones. Do not use the bridge. Miriam was guiding them, even from a house surrounded by a mob. They found the seed vault buried beneath wild blackberry vines and rusted machinery beyond the creek. It had once stored emergency grain, years before Miriam turned it into something far more serious. The hatch was steel. The keypad beside it glowed faint green in the dark. For one awful second, no one knew the code. Then Evelyn saw Miriam's hands in her mind, pale and steady. 28041. The keypad flashed open. They climbed down into cold air and sealed the hatch just as voices spread through the trees behind them. The vault was bigger than any of them expected. Shelves of canned food, water drums, lanterns, batteries, medicine, blankets, tools, even children's books sealed in plastic bins. Miriam had never prepared for a storm. She had prepared for a cleansing. For the first hour, nobody spoke in signs more than necessary. They drank water, counted supplies, checked the lock twice, tried not to picture what was happening above ground. Then Evelyn felt it. A pulse behind her eyes, sharp, sudden, absolute. A staircase. Breaking glass. Miriam standing at the top of her tower steps with one hand on the rail. The crowd below. A violent shove. Then nothing. Evelyn folded over and shook. She did not need anyone to explain what she had just seen. Hours later, long after full dark had settled over the vault, footsteps crossed the dirt above the hatch. Then came a voice, soft, tired, familiar enough to crack the heart open. Her mother. "Open up! They're gone!" Evelyn moved toward the ladder on pure instinct. Her father caught her wrist so hard it hurt. The voice came again, warm and gentle, exactly the way her mother sounded on nights when thunder frightened the younger kids. "Evelyn, open the hatch, honey. It's safe now." For half a second, hope nearly won. Then Evelyn froze. Her mother had never called her honey, not once in 16 years. Her mother called her Birdie, every day, every mood, every season. Birdie when she was proud, Birdie when she was angry, Birdie when she was half asleep and checking on her before dawn. Above the hatch, the voice paused. Then it tried again. Birdie. This time it got the name right. Nobody in the vault moved. The handle rattled once, then again. Then a second voice joined the first, then a third, then a fourth. Her brother, her sister, neighbors, friends, dead people, missing people. Half the town pressed itself against the metal in borrowed voices, patient and clever and tireless. They stayed there until dawn. That was the night Rook Hollow died. Not because every house burned, not because every person above ground was killed. The town died because the thing in the dark learned every loving voice it needed. And from that point on, no locked door meant safety anymore. Every home became a test. Every memory became a weapon. Every cry for help became a trap. Down in the seed vault, Evelyn finally understood what Miriam had protected for all those years. Silence was never a punishment. Silence was a wall, an ugly wall, a brutal wall, the only wall that thing had not fully learned to climb. Morning came, but no one opened the hatch. The voices returned the next night, and the night after that, always changing, always improving, always knowing more. They never screamed, they never demanded. They spoke with the calm confidence of something that understood human weakness better than humans did. Grief sounds like love from the wrong stance. Loneliness sounds like trust when it comes in the right voice. Days passed underground, then more. Food held, water held, nerves did not. Sometimes Evelyn sat beneath the lantern light and stared at the steel ladder, thinking about how easy it would be for hope to wear her mother's voice forever. And as the night stretched on, one truth settled over the vault heavier than the earth above it. Miriam had been right from the beginning. Some monsters do not break into a home. They wait outside and ask to be invited in.